It is my pleasure to welcome you to Career Conversations, Industry Perseverance in Entertainment and Media, featuring an impressive panel of college alumni. I'm Deb Rabergen, Associate Vice Dean for Advancement for Penn Arts and Sciences. The Career Conversations event series was created by the Penn Arts and Sciences Ambassador Council, an Arts and Sciences Alumni Advisory Board that partners with the advancement team to enrich student and alumni experiences through volunteer involvement, intellectual engagement, and philanthropy. Amanda Lewis, a 1999 graduate of the college and a member of the Ambassador Council, will be moderating our panel this evening. Amanda is an accomplished movie producer with over $5 billion in collective worldwide box office receipts across multiple installments of the Fast and Furious franchise and other films. She has worked across the studios on developing projects at Columbia Pictures, Universal, Paramount, Fox, Disney, New Line, and Lionsgate. Welcome, Amanda, and thank you for being here this evening and leading this discussion. I will now turn it over to Amanda to introduce her fellow panelists and begin the discussion.
Thank you, Deb. I'm excited to be here tonight with fellow college alums who are going to share with you their insights on careers in entertainment and media. The panelists have all had interesting career journeys in either entertainment, media, or both, and are looking forward to sharing their insights with you. We'll have an opportunity for Q&A at the end of our discussion, so feel free to type your questions in the Q&A box as we go along. To start the evening off, I'll have each panelist give a brief introduction to themselves. So Denise, let's start with you. Welcome.
So thank you so much. And thank you to the Penn Arts and Sciences Advisory Council, the Alumni Advisory Board, and the advancement team for bringing all of us together. It's really an honor to be here. Again, my name is Denise Bailey Castro, and I'm a proud graduate of the class of 2009, or the Fine 09, as we used to call ourselves. I am currently the head of finance at BET Networks, where I manage all financial aspects of our portfolio, which includes our linear cable network, which is BET, the #1 streaming service for Black content, which is BET Plus, our newest venture, which is called BET Studios, as well as 2 landmark multi-year partnerships with Tyler Perry, as well as Kenya Barris. So in this role, I manage our full P&L, which means everything from ad sales and content licensing on the revenue side to our programming and marketing budgets on the expense side. I made the leap to BET after spending around 4 years in legacy Viacom corporate, where I led negotiations to distribute our content, which includes MTV, Comedy Central, Nickelodeon, and of course, BET, to cable and digital companies, including Dish and Amazon and Roku. And so my time at Viacom actually began at Paramount Pictures nearly 8 years ago. And it has been quite a wild ride, especially post-merger with CBS, but really grateful to be in a place that allows me to help fund Black content with the biggest names in media and drive entertainment forward. So again, really excited to be here.
Great, thank you. Matt, why don't you take it from here? And Matt and I are both on the West Coast together. We were at Penn together as well, and we have the opportunity to work together now, or we try to work together now.
That's right, that's right. Thank you, Amanda. My name is Matt Riley. I was class of 2000 in the college. I majored in English. I'm currently an executive vice president at Universal Pictures. I'm part of the development and production team. So we are always looking for the next big book, the next big movie idea, the next big spec screenplay to turn into a movie and hopefully a franchise. I've been a studio executive for 15 years. I've worked at 3 studios. This Universal, I've been here for 2 years. Before that, I was at Warner Brothers and Fox. I've also produced and started a production company, as well as starting my career at a talent agency. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great. And Zuri, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi there, I am Zuri Rice. I'm college English major, class of 2004. and really excited to be here today. I am currently the head of development and video content strategy for Hearst Magazines. So I oversee the video business for Hearst Magazines. Hearst Magazines include such titles as Cosmopolitan, Harvard Bazaar, Men's Health, Women's Health, Esquire, Good Housekeeping, what was Oprah Magazine and now is O Daily, and a number of other enthusiast things such as Road and Track, Car and Driver, etc. And so essentially I oversee all the video that goes on our websites, as well as the video that we put on our social channels, and then the long form video that we work with streamers and producers and partners to put on other platforms. Before that, I oversaw short form video content for Nickelodeon, and did essentially all of our short form video content that we put on our social channels, as well as our YouTube, for such properties as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, SpongeBob SquarePants, and our essentially current series in live action. And then before that, I did long form, so essentially content that's around the half hours that's on the linear channels for essentially US and Canada, and kind of oversaw our video slate there. Before that, I was at VH1 for a number of years doing unscripted content when we first started moving into celebrity, and also have done some work kind of freelance and with production companies, and started my career actually being a script reader for Lee Daniels back before people knew who Lee Daniels was, before he kind of had success with, then Precious and Empire and all those other things. When he was working out of a Harlem Brownstown. So that was fun. Yeah, happy to be here.
Great. So I was an English major as well. I didn't realize. Denise, were you also? I know Matt and Zuri just said that they were.
I was not. I was an econ major and urban studies.
Okay. So my next question was actually going to be about your path to entertainment, everyone's path to entertainment. And I came to Penn not knowing I wanted to work in film, and I was an English major because I like to read. And it was only a few years into my career where I realized that was really helpful, because now I work with writers all day long. So can each of you talk a little bit about your path to entertainment? Did you enter Penn knowing you wanted to work in media or entertainment? I'd love to hear about everyone's journey.
I'll jump in.
There you go.
I, like you, Amanda, I had no idea. And I think this probably doesn't look good, but again, it was, I'm dating myself, it was the mid to late 90s. I didn't really know there was an industry, kind of like you kind of just go to college and you have interests, but I wasn't yet just laser focused. And then thankfully Penn, I just met so many great people who in my time there that it just, through osmosis, I got laser focused, and the alumni, reaching out to them and finding my people, it really it allowed me to realize that wow, there's actually there's a path here. And so that's kind of how it started, with just conversations about movies in the quad. Like literally that specific led to my career.
Denise, what about you?
Yes, I was very similar to Matt. I didn't even know that this was a career path that I could pursue. And so coming out of Penn, I actually started off my career on a very different path. I was in banking. After I left there, I was sort of like lost, if you will, kind of like a quarter life crisis. I went to work for a nonprofit. I realized there that I was also unhappy and making far less money. And so that wasn't going to work. And so I took a giant step back and I was like, what do I really like to do? I like to watch movies. And that is what led me to Paramount. And candidly, I just got super lucky. I interviewed across many different studios. At that point, I was really focused on being at a film studio. And so I interviewed kind of across the board and got super lucky in terms of meeting the person who became my boss at the time. And we just clicked, and that was how I started off in the industry.
And Zuri, were you entertainment focused while you were in the college?
Yeah, I mean, I would really echo what everyone was saying. When I first started college, I didn't have that idea. Penn was actually similar to Matt, very instrumental in that decision. And actually in me getting my foot in the door. I didn't know that development before I started working more generally in media. I worked like Matt in production and development for many years on the TV side. And I actually found out that that was a career option by seeing it posted. And it was literally, I think, posted. I think that was it. Those were those days. It was posted somewhere that someone was looking for an intern who was actually a Penn alum, a woman who I am actually, she and I have stayed close and actually worked together for many years. And she was working at Viacom. And I didn't actually get my first internship because I didn't have the experience. They hired another intern, but I kept in touch with her and they got another slot. And she was like, I'd love to have you in as an intern. And that really began my 14 years that I was with Viacom at, oh my gosh, the new TNN that then became Spike TV, that then became Paramount, then Nickelodeon, then I was at VH1. Then VH1, then Nickelodeon, and then I just, I moved to Hearst recently, but it was really all a Penn connection, and kind of Penn even letting me know that that was an option. And my internships I also got through Penn, through hearing people speak and reaching out to them, was how I kind of got internships at Miramax and a couple other places.
Great, thank you. Zuri, I'll keep the conversation going towards you. How did you navigate the transition between entertainment and media, or development and media?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I am New York based, and as a production and development, there are more places now, but traditionally in the U.S., you're either in New York or LA, and really you need to be in LA to do a lot of production and development work. So I've logged a lot of flights and spent a lot of time. But I also, as I looked at the longevity of my career, I felt that if I wasn't fully committed to going out to LA tomorrow, it would probably behoove me to expand some of my expertise. So I took a lot of that production development that I knew from television and from long form and looked at how I could do it in short form, and started doing some work with short form, because a lot of the publishers and media companies are still New York based. There are a ton in LA, but there are still a lot in New York. And that was actually something that really worked well with me. It also allowed me to work on a lot of different types of content, and also when I was looking for new opportunities, gave me an opportunity to look at a lot of different types of companies. As I'm sure people are aware, a lot of the more traditional, networks and studios and things have been consolidating. So there can sometimes be less jobs in certain opportunities. But there are other jobs and other opportunities in other places that are looking to be in the content and video business. And so it was really helpful for me in my career to look at other places and other people who are really expanding into more of a video sphere, and how I could work with them. And that's, how I got my position at Hearst.
Smart. Matt, so you started your career sort of on the other end of the spectrum. You were in film production. You started a production company. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that journey was like for you, and any advice you have for someone looking to go in the same direction?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is the advice I got in the late 90s, I still think applies today in a way, which is, I had a friend who was a year above me at Penn who said, you got to start at the agencies. It's like getting an MBA in entertainment. And a very notorious film alumni from Penn, Stacy Snyder, who was kind enough to take 5 minutes to meet me when I was a senior, said the same thing. She said, I started an agency. It's a great place to jump in and just kind of get your bearings if you don't know exactly where to start. Because the truth is there's no right like way to break in. It's just, you kind of got to go with your gut. You kind of got to be lucky. You kind of just have to find your way. And so that worked for me. And I feel like what's great about starting at an agency was it is the ultimate level playing field. They don't care where you went to school. They don't care about your resume. It's just about the work, and it's just about, trying to make the connections that you can while you're there. So it was a really good experience for me. And I feel like if people are up for it and they like the idea of it, and I think it could be a really great way to break in. And that's how I did, because eventually I didn't want to be on the sales side. I want to be on the creative side. And that allowed me to jump from there. So, but I mean, obviously, if you can get in on the creative side from the ground floor, that's even better. Yeah, it just depends.
Thank you. Denise, you are the youngest member of the BET senior leadership team, and you've been with the company since, I think, 2015. How did you work your way up through the company so quickly? And what advice do you have for those looking to advance their careers?
Sure. The biggest piece of advice that I have is to ask for what you want. I think for me, coming from an immigrant family, this didn't necessarily come very naturally for me. I had been doing well in my career, and frankly, I was in spaces and places where neither of my parents had been. And so I sort of always had this sense that I should be grateful and not rock the corporate boat, if you will, especially being a young Black woman. But I think for me, as I grew in my 20s and my professional confidence really grew to match my personal confidence, I began to ask for what I wanted. And that was really when the whole game changed. And I don't just mean asking in terms of salary, but I mean asking for opportunities, right? So asking for new projects, asking for new clients, asked to go on the road show, when things are in person, asked to go to the in-person meeting, whatever it is, I think it's just really important to ask for it. And I would caveat that by saying to also be honest about your ask, right? And so know what's reasonable in the context of your organization and in terms of your personal development as well, but definitely always ask. And an example of this for me, again, is when I started the rotational program, as you mentioned, and it was a brand new program. It was very structured. It was 2 years and 4 rotations at 6 months each. And I got to my second rotation very early on, and I was like, yep, this is where I want to be. I love affiliate sales. I love this energy. I want to stay here, and I'm kind of done rotating. And the ink was barely dry on my corporate ID, and here I was negotiating with the machine that is Viacom HR. But again, I didn't do this blindly. I got buy-in from my SVP and from her boss and from the head of the group. And I was honest about my ask and sort of what I had been contributing to date. And so it felt very reasonable to me. But again, I think that the larger theme of just asking for what you want is so important. I think, especially so if you are in a large media conglomerate or looking to move into a large media conglomerate, as these companies become much larger in size, I think just having the courage to take ownership of your career and to ask for things is super important.
Great advice. Thank you. I'll ask all of you the next question. What is an example of a skill that you didn't pay much attention to early in your career that you have since discovered is essential? Matt, you want to jump in?
Yeah. This is going to sound a little mushy, but I feel like I wish I was kinder earlier on. And what I mean by that is I feel like I didn't realize that we are all in this together. And when you meet people and when you work with people, it always comes around. And I don't mean that like, what I mean by that is what you give to others will come back and serve you. And I think oftentimes, especially in like a cutthroat environment like Penn, you think that it's all just about what you're doing and what you're achieving, but what you don't see necessarily like you do in like a working environment, especially in entertainment, is that the way in which you help others and collaborate with others is actually a skill that you need to learn and that you need to you need to understand, because it's a huge part of how TV and movies get made. And I just think that if you can focus on just being kind first and foremost and helping others, that can turbo boost your career. Even though it's not taught, it's something that I've come to realize is super important.
Zuri, what about you? Any skill that you wish you had paid more attention to early on?
I would say, I mean, definitely what Matt said is very true, especially I would say in something like production development, which is so collaborative, especially when you're on the network side or the studio side. You aren't, it was the realization you're not actually making anything. You're working with other people who are making things and you are supporting their vision. And I think that that's really important. I would say something that I also learned to kind of piggyback on that is, sometimes if you are lucky enough to be in the creative space, you can get so wrapped up in the beauty and fun of the creative space that you don't really get into the nitty gritty of budgeting and finance and legal and production management and sales. And those things, as you start to move up, become real differentiators. That's something that right now for my career, as I've moved and progressed in my career, is a lot bigger. And it was something that it took me a little while to really dig into and to value also those people who are experts in that space. Because those are the people that, again, to piggyback on what Matt said, can sometimes be the difference between you getting something done and not. That there are a zillion creative people and creative people are amazing. And you need, of course, the writers and you need the actors and you need the visionaries. But if you can make friends with the person who is making your budget happen, that is the difference between someone, something goes wrong and the person being like, I got you, like, I'll find the money. It'll be like, I tucked a little sum away for you. And then being like, looks like you're out of luck. And that makes a huge, huge difference. And also when you know how to speak kind of that language and to understand those things, it really helps to propel you, I think, to another level.
Denise, any other skills to add to that?
Yeah, I'm just laughing at Zuri's comment because I feel like the balance between just all of us on this panel is just is so true. I do not have a creative bone in my body. Like, I've been past scripts just like to read them for fun. I'm just like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I would have no idea how to pick out a good script or know anything on the creative side because I've been on the business side. I've been in sales. I've been in strategy, and now I'm in finance. So I just kind of love the balance that we all bring to the table. The skill that I would say from my point of view is probably negotiations. This is something that I didn't even have in my toolkit. Until business school probably. And then I really sort of began to develop that skill as I worked in sales. And I thought that negotiations would end when I left the world of affiliate sales, but I still negotiate pretty much almost every day. In terms of right now, I'm in negotiations with talent on a cost per episode and talking about like how much in COVID costs BET will absorb for a certain show. And so kind of to Zuri's point, right? It's just so important just to have those relationships because, and not that I pick and choose, who I can find dollars for, but it definitely is a major element, of the various conversations. And so negotiations is just really central. I would say not only within media, but just in general across life, I'm sure for everyone across other industries as well.
Yeah, I would agree for myself as well that collaboration is essential to getting your job done. So it sounds like we all learn some of these critical thinking skills from the college, and that's clearly transferable to any career, whether it's the business side or creative side. But are there certain majors or classes or activities that anyone would recommend to current Penn students that would help them on their own journey into entertainment or media? Anyone can jump in.
I would just say, you know, definitely something that I didn't do as much, but would love to have done is I actually didn't really do like screenwriting classes and things while I was there. And I should have. It was like a wonderful opportunity. They were there. Like, why didn't I? Um, of course, there were other reasons at the time, but I think that that's something that I missed out. But I would definitely say just being involved in clubs and networking. Sometimes I think we always think about networking as people that are at a different stage than we are. But a lot of networking takes place with your peers who are going to go on this journey with you and may go in different directions, but you never know how you come together. So I think speaking about your interest in a particular area or idea or a company and talking to other people and seeing how you can help them and being involved in places where people are talking about entertainment, if that's your area of interest, really leads to things in a very interesting and organic way, and is something that I feel like I took advantage of and really helped in kind of cementing different networks and different opportunities.
I would agree. Just to piggyback, I feel like, at least in my own experience, at one point I looked at Penn as just school, and what I didn't realize was that Penn was my career already, because all the people that I was meeting there were the people that were helping me along the way, and I was helping vice versa. So I feel like the sooner you realize that, then you got to find those people. So, like Zuri said, find those classes, find those clubs. I actually took a screenwriting class at Penn, and it was awesome. M. Night Shyamalan was shooting The Sixth Sense the same semester that I was in that screenwriting class. So it was the first screenplay I ever read, and so it was so exciting to know that was in our backyard. And yeah, it just helped knowing that there were other like-minded folks who were into the stuff that I was into, whether it was a dumb movie or a great movie and everything in between. It just snowballs into, okay, what am I doing with the rest of my life? I'm going to go this way with these people.
Denise, you'd probably be a good person to answer this next question. So the flip side of that is, after you're out of Penn, if you are in a different career and you want to redirect yourself onto a different path, are there any skills or tools at that point that would be helpful? Or even is there a grad school or a training certification that you would recommend to anyone looking to change careers?
Yeah, I would say the most important, I think, is just being up to date on kind of all of the current trends and things that are happening across the industry. Things are moving so quickly and changing at such a rapid pace. I personally try to spend about an hour a day just reading various publications and just kind of staying up to date. And so whether it's like Variety or Hollywood Reporter or Synopsis, or if you're trying to go into the ad space, reading Ad Week, or reading broadcasting and cable, or kind of earnings reports, whatever it is. I just think it's super important just to be up to date on the current trends, especially if you're someone who's been out for a period of time and then looking to kind of transition back in, to demonstrate that you haven't really missed a beat, and that you're up to speed in terms of all of the various things that are happening.
Great, thank you. I think we've talked about this a bit, but what role has the Penn Network played in everyone's success? It sounds like a pretty big role. Anyone have anything more to share in that arena?
Yeah, I mean, I got my first internship, I got my first job from Penn Alum. So it was it was everything. It was that connection that gave me the foot in the door, and it's just an awesome resource. And so, as much as you can lean into the connections that Penn affords you, whether it's the people that are in your class or above your class or old people like me, please do. I'd love to give back.
Yeah, I definitely second that. My manager, who is the president of BET Networks, he's a Penn alum. I don't even know which year he is, but he's up there, obviously. And yeah, so I definitely second that in terms of, it is a great network. It's a great resource. And whether it's reaching out via LinkedIn or on QuakerNet or PennNet, I think that the names have sort of changed. On whatever platform it is, I think there's a natural inclination that that Penn people always want to help out other Penn people, right? And so I know that I personally do that, and Matt and Zuri and Amanda, as well. So just like really leaning into that natural connection that's there. We've all been united by 4 years at some point in time, and so there's always something there to start from and to build from.
And I think as I mentioned, yes, my first internship I got from a woman, Ginny Bloom, who I am still I then ended up working with for the beginning part, and then at Nickelodeon again for several years. And so yeah, I would definitely say that it was the reason that I started my career in at Viacom and in media. So definitely super important.
So we've talked about how everyone got to their current careers, and let's talk a little bit about the state of the industry now, which is obviously changing every day. Matt, let's start with you. We know that some traditional movie theaters have announced that they're closing for good. Can you talk a little bit about the film industry, and can it persevere with limited theatrical distribution?
The short answer is absolutely yes. I think I'm not the only one to say I'm dying to get out of my house. And I think that the theaters are going to benefit from that anecdotal truth from a lot of people. I think theaters offer an experience, a communal experience, a visual experience. And look, I love sitting on my couch and streaming just like everybody else, but I don't know. There's something about meeting someone at a theater or going with your family, or just that feeling of, oh my God, I'm going to see another Star Wars movie and I cannot wait. And I got to get in my car to go see it. Like, that is just, you can't replace that with my laptop on my couch. I wish I could, because it's easier, but it's not. So I do think that given the year that we've had, and now coming out of it, I think there's going to be a mad rush back to the theater. So I think they'll be okay.
I hope so.
Me too.
Zuri, do you want to talk a little bit about any insight you might have into the kid-centric side of the entertainment industry? I think one of our attendees had asked a question about the future of this side of the entertainment industry and any directions or obstacles it might face or overcome in our current climate.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about the kid industry is it's the first place where you experience the disruption, because the younger generation are usually the first, they're the earliest adopters of anything. So, if I think about just like my own son, the idea of traditional linear television is not really even something he comprehends. He's like, I'm used to being able to have content on demand. The differentiator between there being certain content that lives on your phone or on your device or on YouTube or on something else, and other content that lives on a channel is just not even a concept for him. And I would say for generations, when we did a lot of work when I worked at Nickelodeon, you saw that happening, that that line between what is in one place as linear and what is in another place as YouTube or short form or something else blurred, and people wanted to just be able to experience content on demand. And what you're seeing is a lot of different content providers moving into that space. and creating, still having kind of a linear experience and a linear expression for some of their, larger tentpole moments, but really wanting to make sure that we're meeting the on-demand, multi-platform nature of the audience with content that they can digest as they want it in the different devices and, and streaming and all those other things that they're already looking at, as well as more curated kind of kids-only experiences. And I think that's just going to continue. I also think that especially in the kid space, as you look at kind of like the talent, there was a time of really, gatekeepers of networks and different executives and producers being really gatekeepers around content. Again, with YouTube and things like that, that's not the case. So you're seeing how there are more opportunities for platforms to provide scale, for platforms to provide a different curated audience, for platforms to amplify with what they do best, which is kind of promoting content, differentiating content, enhancing and packaging content. But you have more voices, which is really exciting. And you're seeing now some voices that are homegrown, whether that's homegrown animation, whether that's, kid talent that is kind of creating their own platforms and then happening. And where that comes out, especially as we look at, diversity of conversation, as we look at kind of a worldwide view of content, it all brings us together in a new way that I think is really exciting. But it is disruptive. And I think the way that the kid landscape is now and where it will be in 5 to 10 years is going to be very different.
That's probably a good segue for a question for you, Denise, about content and how we consume our content. Do you want to talk a little bit about the launch of BET Plus and what effect the pandemic has had on your production and content strategy?
Sure. So BET Plus, which I mentioned before, it is now the #1 streaming service for Black content. And so we launched in September of 2019, so only 6 months before the pandemic started. And, candidly, we had just started to learn how to crawl. And granted, we had a great start, but, and then COVID hit. And we got hit with even more demand than we anticipated because people were home more and they were consuming more content, of course. So it was a really good problem to have. But I would say that 2 big things happened. The first is that we leaned more heavily into acquisitions. And so what I mean by this is if you think about streaming services, oftentimes when you're starting out or in general, it's really important to have a strong slate of original exclusive content. And you sort of think about that as the main lever to how subscribers will come into the service or subscriber acquisition. And then you think about having a deep library, including third-party content, in terms of how you keep subscribers or subscriber retention. And so to give a non-BET Plus example, if you think about HBO Max, for example, the flight attendant is what kind of like brought me into the service. And then their acquisitions such as Friends and South Park, which is one of our Viacom CBS series, is what will keep people in terms of having that deep library. And so when BET Plus first launched, we, again, had leaned in very heavily into our original content. We had a series called First Wives Club from Tracy Oliver, who's the creator of Girls Trip. We had a show called Bigger by Will Packer, who was straight out of Compton, and Ride Along too. And so we had this huge focus on original exclusive content because we just launched. And then as people were kind of like coming into droves into the service and they were staying for longer, we hoped, we learned that we needed to build our acquired library a lot faster. And so we began to go out and acquire more content from the likes of Warner and from NBC, et cetera, to really build that retention muscle that we didn't necessarily have in our first 6 months. The second piece that I would say is Tyler Perry. And so he was the first studio to get back up and running in COVID and during the whole pandemic. And so you may have heard him talk about Camp Quarantine, and this is something that BET specifically ran with Tyler Perry Studios, and we benefited immensely from him being able to open his studios up earlier and being able to deliver more content. And so he was literally the first studio in all of Hollywood, even though he's actually based in Atlanta, to actually open up and to kind of get things running. And so that also, it led to a slight pivot in terms of leaning a bit more into Tyler as well.
Great, thank you so much. I think we have time to open up our Q&A now. So give me a moment where I look at our chat so that I can read some of these questions. Here is a question for everybody, I think. What gaps do you perceive in the current content market? So I guess maybe that's a more creative question, or could be personal opinion.
So hi. So I would say, I mean, the one of the challenges is there's not a lot of gaps in the content market because the content market is pretty deep these days. You know, where I would say, and it's not necessarily a gap, but you know, to piggyback off of some of the things that Denise was saying, I think sometimes some of the larger, very expensive, more marquee original pieces are very big and very beautiful, but most places can only do a couple of those. And so where there is still a ton of opportunity is for, I would say, lower priced content that is, you know, compelling and delivering with audiences across the spectrum, because just about everybody used to have, you know, a couple weeks or, you know, a certain time that they were programming, and now they are constantly programming. They're keeping up with the Netflix of the world, where it's like literally every time you turn around, they've got new. And so I do think that the volume of content that people need has just driven, and I would say this on kind of the more of the television side, has just driven a need for more. And so people who can produce compelling, inexpensive content from, you know, from different countries. I also think there's been much more of an understanding now that people who, if you love a great story and that story is in another language, you know, you just turn on those captions and you keep it moving. And people are, so there's a lot of other places that you can create content with or for. And so I would say that that's a space that I don't know if there's a hole, but I think there's a growing need is for just kind of a larger volume of economic content.
Do any of you think that the streaming market will ever be oversaturated, or is it oversaturated now?
I don't think it's necessarily oversaturated. There's certainly a lot there. I do think that one of the challenges is how do you continue to surface good content, right? And so everyone is going to have different taste profiles. And so I think based on one's taste profile, I don't think it's oversaturated, but I think it can be hard to figure out exactly what it is that you may want to watch at any point in time. I'm sorry, Matt.
No, I totally agree. I feel like the search is almost the hardest part, and because it's such a vast choice, there's vast choices. It's hard to identify what everyone's talking about because everyone's talking about different things, you know. So it's like the days of the hit movie or the hit show feels like fewer and far between, you know. There's only so many Game of Thrones or Sopranos or whatever you want to call it, you know. And with movies, we're still always trying to find that like eventized thing, which is why we have a Marvel movie every 20 minutes and a Fast and Furious movie every 18 months. Thank you, Amanda. But it's because we know that people love them and we know that they're going to come for them. But there's only a couple of those things. There's only so many of those crown jewels. So, yeah, I think it's tricky.
One of the questions is, how long does it usually take to make your way up the industry ladder? I'll say on the creative side, the production side, I think years ago there used to be an idea that you were an assistant first for a couple of years. You learned the job by osmosis, and then you were lucky enough to be able to get promoted either at your company or a different company. And that was sort of a traditional path, but I'm guessing that the path today, that there are many more ways to work your way up, and that has a different meaning for different people. Zuri or Denise, do you want to talk about it more from the media side?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, yes, there's been the traditional, which is like assistant, coordinator, manager, director, VP, SVP, EVP, president. Like, it's kind of, that's the traditional track. But I would say, similar to how there are kind of less gatekeepers and traditional paths for talent and for content. I would say the same thing for for this, that now you have people who kind of on their own will do more. For it would be that if you were creating your own piece or something like that, you would have to have all your investors, you would have to kind of do all of that. Now you may create an amazing viral short, you may create and partner with something that really takes off in its own platform, and you may come into it a completely different way. I would still say there's kind of a certain amount of time that you have to work your way through, but it really varies. Some people kind of go on to other paths. They might be on more of an executive path. They go on to a more creative path. They kind of come back. Some people may go straight through. Some people may, start a completely different path and kind of cross over. There's all different types of people, I would say, especially in a creative space, because the nature of creative work is unique.
On the business side, I think like the levels that Zuri laid out are pretty much still the same in terms of like coordinator, manager, senior manager, director, et cetera, going up the pipeline. And I would also agree that there are there are different paths towards the top, if you will. One thing I will say is that, and I've only been at very large media companies, so places like Viacom, CBS, and having been at HBO. I will say that titles will also vary depending on company to company. And so you'll find that more of the tech companies, I think, including a Netflix, may have a slightly different title versus what you may hear at a larger, a more traditional media conglomerate. And that does not mean that it's any less of a role. In fact, sometimes it often means that it can be like quite the opposite. So that's one thing. The other thing that I would say is also like being at a smaller media company. It can also mean like having access to a broader purview of work. And that can also help to accelerate your career in a different way than being at a much larger and more traditional media company.
This is a broad question, but can anyone identify a big challenge and big opportunity ahead, given the state of our industries now?
I would say an opportunity is quite frankly the fact that there is a lot of change happening. There is a way that things have been done, and there's a way that people are used to things being done, and that is changing. And that's really, it's challenging, but it's also really exciting. If we just think about the fact that, like, in the time that I can remember, Netflix was something that you got in the little red kind of a thing, and now it's like taken over the world. And so you don't know, like, what is that new thing? What is that next thing? How does that continue to evolve? And I also, though, think that what's exciting is that people love storytelling. They love content. They love entertainment. That doesn't change, whether it's, on your phone, whether it's, in an app, whether it's, streaming. And so it's just seeing how that's going to continue to evolve for a new generation of people that are looking for content and connecting with content, I think is exciting. It is challenging because we have done things in a certain way, and that way is evolving, shall we say.
Denise, we have a question specifically for you. Did you find that your experience in banking helped you when going into the entertainment industry?
I did. I do think that it was pretty much, it is what led to my first role at Paramount. Again, I had only been in banking and then at a nonprofit. And the only other experience, if you will, or qualification that I had is that I love to watch movies. And so when I was interviewing in terms of tangible skills, I was sort of like naturally pushed into more strategy and finance roles. And so the group where I landed at Paramount, it was our internal strategy group. And I think that I was definitely sort of like hired because I brought those financial analytical skills. And the head of the group at the time, she herself had been a banker. She had been in private equity. She had gone to business school. She had been a consultant. And so I filled that void in terms of what she was looking for. But it was sort of a unique, I would say, like way of entering the industry in terms of having that skill set and then kind of like being pushed into that type of a role.
And we have a question from Matt. One of the biggest industry shifts we've seen during the pandemic was the growing prevalence of hybrid releases, such as Mulan and Warner Brothers sending its film slate to HBO Max. Do you think that this will continue post-COVID, or do you think most releases will return to primarily theatrical releases?
I think I'm not skirting the question, but I think it's both. I think the hybrid release it's a bet. It's all betting on subscriber growth. So until those subscribers stop coming, I don't think it's going to stop, because I do think they are servicing what audiences want, which is choice. Do I want to go to the theater or do I want to watch it on my couch? And I think that's a good thing. And similarly, something that Universal's done lately is, given the pandemic, is we kind of changed up the windowing. So normally you'd have to wait almost 3 months before you could see something outside of a theater on PVOD, home entertainment. So now we have some flexibility with AMC, this deal we made where if a movie doesn't hit a certain threshold, we can go to PVOD within 17 days. So that's a big change, which again is in the spirit of let's give the audiences what they want, which is choice. But it's also, I think, in the spirit of collaboration, which is we understand that theaters need exclusivity, and we're going to honor that, but to a degree, depending on the performance of a movie. We've all driven past a movie theater 2 months after it opened going, oh my God, they're still playing that movie. There's really no reason for it other than legacy. And so I think both can be true. So it remains to be seen, but it's an exciting time. Like Zuri said, things are changing, and it's really an exciting time to see what happens.
Does anyone have an opinion on what aspects of working remotely do you think entertainment companies will retain once the pandemic is over and transitions back to normal?
I would say one thing is that I've many times traveled for like a meeting. And I don't know that we're going to do that as much anymore. I think there are definitely, when you're on location, when you're shooting, when you're wanting to be there, when you're having kind of larger creative conversations. But as someone who traveled a great deal, and at great expense, I can see companies, I think, embracing some of the more digital aspects of what we do and really narrowing in on when is it truly a value add to have everybody in the same room and connecting, and when is it just something we're used to doing.
And does anyone have advice for someone who might be a freelancer in the entertainment industry who is looking to build their network?
I would say just being aggressive, be your best salesperson and, cold call, email, get in people's faces and hustle. I've had the luck and the privilege of working at established media companies. So my couple of years as a producer, I definitely felt the freelance life, and I got my butt kicked. So I actually have a lot of sympathy for that feeling and for that struggle. But it's, I think, incumbent upon you to hustle and to find the opportunities where they may be.
I think we will just ask you guys one more question. Do you think you can leave us with a piece of advice to help those interested in a career in entertainment and media and how to persevere in those industries? Denise, you want to start us off?
Sure. I would say just don't give up. It sounds really basic, but I remember when I was just trying to break into the industry, and again, I was very focused on film at that point in my career. And there aren't a ton of film studios out there. And I was coming from New York. I had never been on the West Coast. I didn't even have my driver's license. There was a whole lot going on. I got a ton of no's. And sometimes I didn't even get no's. I just didn't get a response back, period. So I was lucky to get a no. But the number one thing was just to not give up, right? Just keep trying. Continue to find different avenues to reach out to people at different companies, and the door will eventually open. And when the door does, it's going to be an amazing opportunity that will lead to very many more doors down the road.
Zuri, do you have anything to add on?
Yeah, I mean, just to really reiterate something that Matt said earlier that I think is so important is just being nice. Which seems like a given, but the people that you come across will be people that, if you are lucky, you will be coming across for many, many years to come. And people remember when you were really pleasant, when they were starting out, or when they made a mistake and you were very pleasant around it. And that stays with them, years and years and years after the fact. And if you did not do that and you chose another path and how to react to something, that also stays with them. And it's not also, again, just the people who are higher, it's the people who start as an assistant and, you never then become, great or continue to be an assistant, but are an assistant at some place that you now want to be. It's just really important, of course, for the thing of just being kind, but also just for your career, that you extend people the courtesy that you can, and that you treat people the way that you would like to be treated, because chances are you will come in contact with them again.
Absolutely. Matt, any last words?
I would say go out of your way to help someone else, because as soon as you do that, you're literally going to be completely free of thinking about yourself. And I guarantee you keep doing that as a habit. One of those connections, that journey down that path of helping someone, it's gonna come back to you through a call that you made on their behalf, through an email that you sent. You suddenly make a connection, and suddenly you have an opportunity because you were helping someone else and not thinking, what am I doing for me?
Thank you guys so much. This has been really great. I think Deb is popping back on our screen, and thank you for being such great guests.
Well, thank you all. Thank you, Amanda, for moderating, and Matt, Denise, and Zuri. This was really fantastic. We had lots of great chats about all the wonderful questions that came in from the audience as well. So thank you all for joining us tonight for this event. One of the things that we've enjoyed in the last year is the ability to do virtual events like this that bring New York and LA and people from all over the world together live at one time instead of being physically in one location together. So I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. I encourage you to stay connected with Penn Arts and Sciences by connecting with us on social media. Our tag is @PennSAS everywhere. You can support our school and our students by joining Ben Connect. There is a link in the chat for Everyone. That is our arts and sciences mentorship platform for students to connect with each other, with alumni to connect with each other. And it's a wonderful program that we've had a lot of great engagement between students and alumni in networking opportunities like this throughout the year. You could also consider making a gift to the Arts and Sciences Annual Fund, which is a flexible fund that allows us to be responsive to student need in a world that requires constant change. So again, there's links to both of those in the chat. I'm happy to talk with anyone who's interested in volunteering, being involved in panels like this, or getting connected to other Penn College alumni. So thank you again. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening.